I think my model is foolproof, just do the opposite of what I
Yeah.
do and it's.
Yeah. Just do what your wife tells you to do. It's usually the right
That
thing.
is usually the right. I just left Bible study and I literally made a funny comment about that. I was writing a note to our daughter. Who lives in, two of our kids live now in Hawaii and.
Yeah, I knew that.
About her old car and I wrote a text and something is much more than that.
Got one.
Yeah, I need that in my life. Sometimes I say the rudest, wrongest thing. Hello.
There he is.
I got you. Good drive from Charlottesville.
Do you know Lincoln?
I've heard about Lincoln. I'm Liz. Nice to meet you. Nancy talks about you a lot. Nice to meet you. Thanks.
One of the troublemakers are here so far.
That's right.
Oh, there's a troublemaker online.
You told me earlier you're not a rebel rouser. I like I should do some reading before I should.
Hello.
Crimes? Crimes? I don't know. This is where my name was. Shit's where I sat on council for a year, so I feel right at home, actually.
Looks right.
Yeah.
I thought maybe, you know, on either side of Dan.
Susan and I were on the, she was on.
Hi. How are you?
Yeah. I'm sure you know her very well.
She apparently questioned my mom in the grocery store the other day.
What'd you say?
That sounds like something Molly would do.
Questioned my mom at the grocery store.
She's like, who, me?
Not she.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. How about you? Looks like I have Snow White there.
How's my buddy Grant?
He's
On
good.
the video.
Yeah.
So,
We have a birthday party scheduled for Bright on Saturday.
You're down for what?
We have a birthday party for Bright on Saturday, but now they're calling for like 9 inches of snow.
That sounds like that, we can walk over and so that's
Except
like,
it's at Yancey, and
oh,
they don't give refunds. $200.
can you reschedule?
Well, yeah, I
How
don't know,
much notice do you have to give them?
15 days. But I'm wondering if like, if we really get that much snow, are they even gonna?
That's not fall. That's in nature. I've got.
I know, would they even open the building?
where have you, my thing is only over 7 inches or so for Saturday.
Yeah,
Where you?
I don't know, this is my husband, he's
He's
the
a weather guy.
He is the
Out
weather
there, out
guy.
in the valley, they're that way, they're like.
Yeah, he said 1 inch at first, and then he was like, oh, this is saying 9.
People have been.
I'm down for a hike.
It's all.
The Yankee.
Why not?
Make sure you go to the grocery store and get some.
I just wanna have this party.
Used to have this joke that we do in my office, this was like 30 years ago. So you could say something like, it might snow 10 inches.
I did, how about you?
All I have to do is say, I heard somebody say it might snow 10 inches.
Right.
No,
And then it's,
it's just everywhere.
yeah.
What? Somebody said it might snow, yeah. somebody said it
Javier.
might snow.
42.
Somebody said it might snow 10.
What's that?
Turned 42 days ago.
Well, I grew up in Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm turning
Just
45
looking at it,
soon.
they
Yeah,
know
you already
days
know.
ago.
I already know.
So, because I am remote today, I thought it would make more sense to see if Vice Chair Strasner would be willing to chair the meeting.
Yes, I was just gonna move this.
Oh, great, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
44, yeah.
And that for me, that's one thing, it's like started to.
So is the airport
Come on, for reals.
item, or is it just a process?
Okay,
Representation.
yeah, I have to
Uh-huh.
call the meeting. I'm calling the meeting to order. It is 7:05. Can we get a roll call, please?
Mom Angeline? Here. Lisa,
I am here. I am remote in Scottsville because of health reasons.
Dan Cristo,
Here.
Elizabeth Moss,
Here.
Shannon Strassman.
Here. Now do I bang the gavel or do I just do that at the end?
There again.
This is when you want to command leadership. Yeah. Good call.
All right, we are going to move on to agenda item 2. Oh yeah, first of all, we need to agree to the agenda. Does everybody agree to the agenda as written?
Second.
Awesome. All right. We're also reviewing and approving past meeting minutes for September 5th, 2023 regular meeting and the October 2nd, 2023 regular meeting.
So moved.
I'm sorry.
I just
I
said
was-
so moved.
I wasn't in the meeting, so I
That's
couldn't.
second.
If you want to.
Agree. I got you.
I wrote it down.
Yep.
So she seconded
Everything
it.
Agreed, second.
Okay. All right, and then relevant actions by town council reports
Do we have a vote on that?
on the approval of past
minutes?
meeting minutes.
Oh, we had made a motion and seconded it, did it?
Yeah, you should go down there.
So do you want a list?
Or
Like a
just an
roll call
aye.
Kind of thing, or?
Okay, all right, do I have a all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, and Dan.
Of note from the town council, you might have noticed there's a new face at this table.
Mhm.
And
It's because he loves me so much.
I know, he does.
I am a
We had to
fan
go like
of
this
our new planning commissioner who the town council voted along with 2 new ARB members at the same time. And this former town councilor is now on the planning commission. I want to say welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf.
Anything you want to say?
I look forward to serving the town, you know, I see a lot of historical knowledge that maybe I could provide or support. Having experienced the town for 6 years. So I hope to be of use. I know I'll be of use.
Already.
The other thing that I will say that I took part in as a town councilor, although it's a planning commission function, was being a part of the Boys and Girls Club when they were here. And there, at the town councilor, there are many things I can do, but there are a few things that were as fun as that.
Mhm.
So that was quite enjoyable, and I don't know if you want to mention anything about that. Are you gonna tell more about it later?
I've got a few slides.
Okay, so that was very enjoyable, fun day, and there's another one coming up, and which you'll talk about. I would say those were the most relevant things I would talk about, and a little bit of conversation about the safety committee that's Eileen is heading up, and then also conversation in the town council. We will be talking about budgeting things later on.
Mhm. For the ARB, is that, did those 2 positions, did they fill the
They're filled,
ARB?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can't tell.
The two
Brad Barker and Claire.
There,
McCann.
yes, okay. Okay, just wondered. Who stepped down?
First, Austin due to work commitments.
Mhm.
And then Erin Root due to,
Okay,
she's expecting to.
right, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, do we have any matters from the public? Online?
I don't see anyone online. Vice Chair.
Okay,
Nancy, put it back like this.
Dave, you have anything to say?
okay. All right, moving on to new business. I'm looking at Lisa's face. Do I have to close matters from the public? first? Okay, I'm, do I have well, we're closing the matters from the public. Okay, new business. The first on the agenda is policy on public comments during matters from the public, public hearing.
You want me,
Yeah, I was kind of wondering where this,
it'd be this, statement.
Where did you?
where did the impetus for this come from?
Oh, so.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Little
so-
unhinged last time.
I had a conversation with, your chair, right before things, right before New Year's.
Mhm.
About, speaking rules for a public hearing.
Okay,
Lisa can jump in when you want, to kind of get a little bit of background. Okay, so this kind of dovetails out of a joint session that's required for us.
mhm,
So I shared that in the staff report that I provided previously.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's that we call it a joint session. These rules, chair wanted to recommend that I draft these. I'll give you a heads up that these are essentially what the county uses.
mhm,
They're relatively rounded and based off of research I received from the county and from our attorney.
okay,
So there's nothing really out of it's boilerplate, I guess.
Okay.
When you're in public comment, you're kind of weighing two things. You're weighing the efficiency of your meeting, because you're carrying out business in your meeting, but also
Right.
the free speech rights of your public. So I shared that in a sign up. As with everything, I'm kind of just providing our chair's tools. for
Okay.
Meetings, so.
great. Are we going to be announcing these at public hearings from now on? Because I don't think,
Posting them on the website or Facebook.
you know,
Yeah, I think my intention would be for each, in advance of the opening of the public hearing, I would say to the audience, please make sure you've signed in. And depending on how many people there are, we'll let them know whether they have 2 minutes or 3 minutes. That way they know what to expect.
mhm,
I'd like to have a sign-in sheet, because then I think it helps them decide, like kind of commit to whether they want to speak or not. And then it helps us to determine how many minutes. And it helps us plan the meeting a little bit more.
okay. I think it would also be useful to have maybe like a poster board with the rules on there, just state your full name. I notice a lot of people get up and they don't say their last name.
Putting it on the podium.
Yeah, on the podium.
Yeah.
Big, right?
Yeah.
And as they go up and they can see
Right.
it.
Yeah, because I feel like people get nervous and then they forget what they're saying and.
Is this
Yeah.
something the council needs to vote on?
Your chair for planning commission can decide how to run their own meeting. Town council, how they wanna run
Right.
their meeting, so.
Okay.
That's a conversation with town council separate. I specifically drafted that says, planning commission, because I just wanted to provide something that I was requested with. I think as a staff recommendation, it's a pretty straightforward, efficient tool, and it respects everybody's, time.
Okay. I think Liz might have been asking, is this something that we need to adopt and vote on? Or are these just stated rules that we just need to enforce?
Your chair could decide.
Okay,
Also, if there was some reservation about it, you have a voting body here also, too.
okay.
Well, I just want to reiterate again, and thank you for saying that, we'd like to have these rules said at the beginning of meetings. It's a really big point of contention for everyone. And I feel like many members of the town have expressed frustration with not feeling like they can speak or whatever. That they're being rushed off the stage, so to speak. But I think if they know what the rules are, that will give it some structure. So I'm glad this is happening. I just want to caution that, we want to make sure they know we want their their comments and their input, so.
Well, if they,
Same.
yeah,
We emailed to the Riviera Club folks before the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm usually in communication with,
Okay,
especially their legal counsel.
Right.
Okay,
another point about the Riviera Club, and the special session in 2 weeks. The idea is for the meeting to begin at 6:30, Javier.
Yes,
And for us to take approximately an hour. That would depend on how much input there is from the public. So if we had 15 people speaking at 2 minutes, that's a half hour. I expect we're going to get a lot of feedback. I think we're going to get a fair amount of people on both sides of the matter. So I don't know, what do we do if it goes over an hour? I mean, does town council want to have us out at a certain point so they can do their part? Or do we take as long as we need?
I think the most important is to properly have a public hearing for planning commission, because it's a requirement for you guys to have a public hearing and then provide town council with a recommendation.
and
Okay.
then town council has their own public hearing. We're just doing it all at the same time.
Similar to what I read in
for all.
2018, you guys had a joint meeting. Planning commission went into session, had their public hearing, went out of session, or provided a recommendation, went out of session, and then town council came into session to receive the recommendation and then on their public hearing.
Okay, yeah.
So we skipped some steps.
I didn't properly know this as I wrote in the report to properly do the public hearing.
And we're having to do a joint session in order to have them present to us again.
Depending on, they spoke, so I still have to carry out a legal public hearing and carry comments on that. So it'll still be in the record last meeting. But these are legal requirements I have to do. The upside is we do it all at once.
So was it decided that they needed an SUP for what they're doing?
No, this is for the zoning text as we discussed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So any zoning text, any comp plan, and any ordinance change, in regards to zoning needs a public hearing. There's different, requirements.
Because I'm getting the feeling that these people are feeling persecuted or something along those lines. Is this do they understand what's going on, that this is all bureaucracy and not?
I've been clear about this as through the whole process. And I have communicated, I've written up staff reports, and I've spoken to the applicant and to their council too. And it's been said in multiple meetings now.
Okay,
Yeah.
But this, sorry, go ahead.
no,
Are you sure?
I'm good.
Okay, so from what I was reading before the meeting tonight, this isn't specifically about the Riviera Club. It is just about
Zoning.
the zoning text
Correct.
that will govern, which way we go with them, but it'll also govern everybody else.
And we're doing a joint session to expedite that.
Yeah,
And
guess
the
so.
Riviera Club members are going to come.
I'm sure to
I'm sure
voice
I'm not-
opinions,
but-
but
Okay.
will they be there?
They've been a part,
They've been a part of it.
they've been a part of all the dialogue that we've had, their attorney and representatives have been at each thing. I guess I would say they're very aware of it. At least they're the people who are supposed to communicate in their organization are totally aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean everybody in their organization knows. I'm just saying that
Okay.
the official people over there are very clear on what's happening.
So it sounds like from what I could tell, correct me if I'm wrong, the options are that we enforce the special use permit and we strike the other zoning text amendment that says it's by right, or we strike the special use permit and we go with the by right. But the lawyers did not want to add our lawyer, town lawyer, to keep it simple, did not want to add the 501c because they think that it poses an undue burden on whatever organization to go through the whole process of getting a 501. But in my mind, just, to talk, you know. That made me feel a little bit better about having groups and clubs, you know, as far as discrimination goes and people being held accountable in some form or fashion. And so if we're not gonna have the 501c, I don't know, it just made me feel, that amendment made me feel a little bit better, but it doesn't sound like that's how town council wants to go.
Well, it's, just to be clear, our attorney does not want us to do that.
Right,
I
sorry.
mean, I mean, like, we're
Yeah.
not gonna, but like, he made it clear that, I forget. All the, you might remember Javier, but he made it clear, can't do that for,
Okay,
it wasn't the town council, it was the attorney.
sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
spoke.
No, it's okay, it's okay.
Yeah, so it sounds like the two options are strike one or the other.
Yeah,
As I wrote in the staff report.
Yeah.
For you guys. This is good because I wanted you guys to discuss the rationale behind the staff recommendation
Mhm.
compared to what I have reported out, that, planning commission has been discussing or discussed last month. And then the second one is like, I want to stress this, the planning commission should understand that they have their discretion on providing a recommendation
Right.
to town council. Staff's here just to provide information and,
So we could just send them a memo or anything like that,
who?
town council.
I guess that's the
Well,
point.
you never argue with the town attorney.
Well, this is a zoning, well, I mean, but to be clear, I don't think, did the town attorney tell us that we should make it by right, or did he tell us if you're inclined to make it by right, then don't worry about the nonprofit status?
that's correct, that is,
Okay.
I mean, the choice of which way to go has merits either way, but the council. Took our Mr. Bowling's recommendation to understand that having what you had mentioned, not to do that, but. The staff recommendation is to go by right, that's correct, so, and the staff recommendation. Seems the cleanest version of it.
Sure, it
I
is.
mean, it's
Clean
it's
it.
best for the town or just clean.
Correct. Well, meaning part of this has to do with untangling it. It was an untangling.
Well, and I think there's been a lot of ex parte. I mean, I don't have to be involved in every thing, but I think you're kind of trying to say, we've already covered this. And this is it.
Well, what I'm saying is, I am saying where we've been to where it is, the issue of. The group coming in. To the best of my understanding, we at the town council were a bit surprised when they came in. I think we at the planning commission were a bit surprised. I think they were. That didn't do anything wrong, it's just steps that come in the process. And in terms of the group, these are just people from the town who we want to support in one way or the other. But from where the attorney recommended to us, and as Javier said, I think it was to also to the agreement of their representative Dennis and their attorney Nancy. They were very favorable to us doing a joint meeting, like they were fine with that, because they wanted to go fast.
I get that. I feel like we talked about it, we voted, we gave a recommendation, it's all on video. And now we're having a joint meeting and we need to be there in order to read
That's the path.
Yeah,
that.
the
That's the
imperative
law.
thing is I need to properly notice.
Yep.
Based on
The
VA
community.
code,
Okay,
to be able to properly provide town council recommendation you have provided.
I totally understand, and it's not a big deal that this happened, I just feel like there's a whole meeting I have to go to. That would serve the purpose of this past meeting. And I understand we're thick in the weeds of the bureaucracy and just a little annoyed.
So why did Mr. Bowling recommend not adding the 501c?
Because first, it can almost take a year usually. To receive a 501 status, and then we are talking about a commercial district. So there is a possibility of a civic minded but for-profit club coming in, serving the same purpose. So
So a for-profit wouldn't just be a business? they could also be civic minded, so they would call themselves a club?
They would still be. Sorry, could you repeat that?
I don't think I can.
Like, what is an example of a for-profit civic-minded club? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering why they would fall under that heading. If they were for profit, they'd be a business, right?
Are
I
we
don't know.
are we
I'm
gonna
not
have to-
trying to belabor this point. I just feel as if there's just way too much attention on this club. And I think that we just need to make a decision about the tax.
But
And
you
that-
have to advertise for a certain amount of time. How long is it?
So I advertise, it's 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to do that. That's just the law.
No, that's fine. Anyway,
But I want to have it, because in order to have this discussion next time, I would like to know the answers to these things.
Yes,
Like, what is an example of a club that isn't,
Like a strip club,
a strip
Right,
club
for
for
profit.
profit, but they're civic minded.
Oh, they're doing community service.
gotcha.
I have a
Okay.
question, Javier, are we gonna have to increase our police hours for the lateness of this club? Cause I know our police officers leave.
so I've discussed with him and he isn't really concerned about noise ordinances or about disturbances.
Who's him, the police chief?
Yeah.
Okay,
So that was just it isn't a zone, well, in some ways it isn't a zoning question, it's more of enforcement of our book of ordinances or code of ordinances, but he hasn't expressed any concern about the club. Or about clubs in general.
Is there a conflict of interest for them fundraising for the club and the club giving the money to the police department?
That is a question I could come back with. For you.
I said, my biggest concern, and I support the club and it's a free country, let them do what they want, but if there's drunk driving at midnight in Scottsville and our police officers leave at 10 o'clock, there's a safety issue
Yeah,
there. And I think like we have to ask pointed questions,
yeah.
because if they're donating their money to the police department's not gonna say anything. So what's the conflict there? Like, do we need to talk to the town attorney?
Yes,
Well, are other organizations allowed to donate to the police department or the fire department?
No. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding again.
And we do have police
Yes, they
on
are.
duty at midnight. It's just not the town police.
Yeah, well,
I think like, I mean, I guess for me, like regardless of what the club is, we need to make a decision on the zoning. So do we want this to be by right? And anybody can come in and do, like, set up and establish a club?
And
Whether
and
they're
that's a
for-profit-
rhetorical question because we shouldn't be answering that question until we have a public hearing.
Okay,
so we're not allowed to get on the same page about it before.
Well, I mean, we're
That's what
allowed to
meetings are
discuss
for.
it, but we're not allowed to be making up our minds, but
Oh,
we
yeah.
should be discussing it. I'm just saying it's rhetorical. It's not
I still
something
think I'm
that,
kind of out of the loop. I think I've been not in conversations that you all have already had, so.
I don't think you are, I mean, I have a conversation.
yeah, I don't think we've
Oh,
had
I'm
any.
not talking about you.
Oh,
I just feel like. I'm not sure I have all the information on this issue.
All right, so
Not sure.
So let's backtrack a second. The guidance from the town attorney is that the conversation that we had in our last meeting, we shouldn't have been making a recommendation to town council. So in order to make a recommendation, we need to have a public hearing. So town council shot it back to us and said, yes, we do want you to have a recommendation, but there needs to be notice. We need to have a public hearing and there has to be adequate notice. So that's where Javier came in, reached out to me as the chair and said to me, should we have a special session on this? He requested it for 2 weeks from now because that's when town council's already having their meeting and he wants to expedite it because the folks in the Riviera Club have been working with us for a couple of months and feeling a little frustrated because there's been this discrepancy in the town code. So I said, I get it. I don't like the bureaucracy either. Sure, let's try to expedite this, get an answer for them once and for all. So that's where we're at. We have a meeting scheduled for 2 weeks from now. I think we emailed about it, and I
Mhm.
recognize that it's totally
Yes, you did.
inconvenient. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, you did, or there was an email about it.
Okay,
I'm
so,
not saying I wasn't informed.
but this is the background that wasn't fully, I don't know if it was fully explained. But so yeah, it's totally inconvenient. I'm not happy about it either, but I also recognize that these poor folks want to open up this club and have been, we have had this discrepancy in the zoning text that only just came to light. So let's do our part to try to resolve it and get an answer for them one way or the other. So whether that is a decision to make the social club by right, or it's a decision to require a special use permit for that type of social club.
Okay, so we're just gonna drop it now.
Javier, if
Right.
a planning commission member wanted to talk to the town attorney about the information, is that allowed? So you can talk to the town attorney about it. He'll give you the insight.
Oh, hey, okay,
Call him up.
all right, thank you.
He's on a retainer. Okay. He's,
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's gonna happen, I'm not.
I guess I just, regardless, like, I will say it again, regardless of the Riviera Club, how do we feel about? I think we were all comfortable, and, tell me if I'm wrong, at the last meeting with the addition of the 501c language, but if we're being told that we shouldn't do that, which is fine, then it sounds like our two options are make it special use or make it by right. And are we comfortable making a recommendation one way or the other?
So what
And
we're.
knowing that we still have to have a public hearing
Yeah.
and that
Well,
kind of thing, but
and I think what we're saying, what we're opening it up to is if someone were to buy a storefront, which they did, I guess, or had. a
they're renting
storefront,
it.
They're renting it, they have a storefront, anybody could do that and just do anything they wanted to in that premises. I mean, we're leaving it wide open for that, is that right?
Yeah, so
if we make it by right, yes.
Yeah,
the major question, and I've talked to council members, to planning commissioners. And I see both sides of it. That's the advice I got from Becky, but I actually didn't. It's really a distinction, what is permitted use, what does the town see as something more stringent with an SUV? Because I have an inconsistency, so I go off the strictest one, which is SUP. But I can't really read into the text any intention
Right.
when we originally formulated that. So these are questions.
I'm thinking that leaving it wide open like that, that kind of view on it is making me feel a little bit better about an SUP, because
Mhm.
I think that it's important that we know what's going on in the town, and if somebody comes in and just starts doing their thing, I mean, you were right, Liz. I mean, we have to take into consideration some of the byproducts of all of that. It is disconcerting that the police leave. At all, actually. But I don't get, I mean, these people are civic minded, so far, the plan is not to make an uproar party all the time, but I don't know that. It's none of my business. But, there are byproducts of these things, and I think for us to weigh the decision, I think that would be more important. So I'm just saying that, yes, we were in agreement before, but
Right.
now I'm starting to.
That's what
have
I'm,
some
and
caution.
that's
And you're
also
right,
how I'm feeling.
it's because taking that language out again
Mhm.
leaves it wide open.
That's why it's important to have a public hearing and have a discussion by planning.
Right.
commission.
I
Wrote
just-
down,
I got you.
this is an opportunity to
Yes,
properly provide town council with a recommendation of the commission.
okay,
There's also the cost with the SUP, which is $1,500.
Right.
So if you have a nonprofit that is coming in, I'm not saying them, but somebody else, you
Mhm.
know, it's a very large cost to them.
And for us,
Understood.
Yeah.
Is it-
publicly
Yeah.
notice is about 500.
Okay,
And then, for example, zoning text amendment, you have to notice twice.
okay,
So the fees were increased earlier at the beginning of the fiscal calendar,
right,
to address these necessities.
But
Okay.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I agree that's a lot of money, but if that's the fee, you know what I'm saying? Like, these aren't reasons not to have some sort of decision-making process on someone operating, you know, in the business district. You know, I think that, you know, they have said and let us know that they're civic minded and they wanna do things for the town. And boy, we could use the help, so yay. I do have a couple of concerns, you know, I didn't like the language from their application and things like that. But if, you know, I don't think that's up to me, but I do have some concerns about that as well. I won't talk frankly about it here, but can talk to me.
Do you, Dan, will you guys be discussing this in work session also?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
was there also, I saw something about another discrepancy, a second discrepancy, would we also be voting on the language?
So that is a question to you guys.
Yeah.
My suggestion is, because it kind of got lost in the more interesting portion. But reading over section 11 of our zoning code, which is commercial, I also found the same inconsistency with fire and rescue squad stations.
Right,
Again, it's something I want to kind of clean up since we're already in the neighborhood. Pun intended. Again, I can't really tell what the intention was originally from all the history, which is true. Our zoning is a copy of 96 from 1996 Alamo zoning code. We've had a rescue squad, well, we've had a fire department downstairs before. But I have set it up in a way that if planning commission is interested in giving a recommendation to clean this up at the same time, we could do it in the same ordinance.
and we could, and have the public hearing for both.
Both, yeah,
Okay, great.
properly noticed for both.
They came from the same place when the Albemarle County 96 plan was used, to my understanding, and so when that happened, when we adopted that as a town, it created a conflict, we just didn't recognize it,
Until now.
yeah. Which is lovely.
One question that I have a feeling will come up is there a difference between a club and a nightclub? And does our commercial district have any zoning about the hours of operation?
Yeah, do we have is
And
there
you-
noise?
There's,
We did a lot of work on that for the noise ordinance. And the closing time of public establishments, but since it's private, you have no control over that.
Private, we don't have control over it?
No, when they're private, you can't tell them when to close.
Usually it ends up being agencies hours.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be an ABC thing. So if there's alcohol being served,
I think the policy now is you have to stop serving before midnight. And
okay, but they don't have to go home. Okay, gotcha. But is there a distinction between a nightclub and
Right,
a club? And if, I mean, if not in the commercial district, where would we allow a nightclub? I mean, isn't this the right environment for a nightclub, the downtown commercial district?
I mean, it just says clubs and lodges, civic, fraternal, patriotic.
Well, I think, we
Yeah,
might want to mention something about nightclubs if we want to allow them or not. Because that word club that's a big word. What
broad,
does that mean?
Well, and
Right.
I get the feeling that the civic minded kind of focus was maybe secondary to their application. I don't know. I mean, I hope really good things. I just don't know, but there's no way to verify that. So when we start talking about the 501c, that would have given us a way to, you know, maybe reduce the fees for people who are, you know, not for profit. Or I don't know what, but. I'm gonna stop talking.
That's a good idea. I like that idea.
No, I mean, it's a good point. The problem is that we have real expenses relating to the advertising.
Right.
We can't, so if we're making it special use, we don't have the ability to waive those fees for some people.
Yeah,
We don't
I'm
have the funding.
you know, waiving or not having the fees associated with it should not be the reason why we don't require an SUP. You know what I mean? Like, I feel for them, but it's like cost of doing business or whatever, and that's just the way it is. If we want to make it different, then we have to get down to the nitty gritty and make decisions about that kind of stuff. I just feel right now, if I had to make a decision right now, I don't think that we should leave it open-ended for anyone to come in and do whatever they please in a by right situation. And maybe that just pertains to the business district.
Unfortunately, if you do the SUP, you can't say, I'm gonna charge you a fee, but I'm not gonna charge you a fee.
No, I
Because
know
that
that.
sets the precedence of very big legal.
Sure, but I assume that if we, well, maybe I am just assuming, but if we were to make this 501c language a part of it, then they would already be designated as a separate item, and we could make language to that effect.
So Lincoln, digging through the text, also did find in our special use area, a space for, in our zoning ordinance for special use. We do have commercial recreation establishments, including and not limited to amusement centers, bowling alleys, pool halls, and dance halls. So those kind of establishments, you require an SUP in the commercial.
Right.
Okay,
That gives you a
awesome.
little bit of context.
Right.
Yeah, well, and I don't know how all this fits in.
Mhm.
I just wish we were all above board about the description of this place or any place that would fall under that zoning. I think we're in a gray area a little bit. Does anybody see that, or is it just me?
This is America,
Oh, God. Hi, Liz.
freedom.
There
Give
is
them their
freedom,
freedom.
there is freedom. I don't want to take anybody's freedom. Please.
I mean, you can still apply for a special use permit if we go that route.
Yeah.
You're free to do that.
It's town council is wanting to go ahead and have it be a by right situation.
I think they're having the same conversations as you guys.
Well,
are having.
one of the things I will say, Mr. Bowling advised us not to telegraph our thoughts, so to speak. He kind of said, in other words, he was basically saying, all the conversation you have and have it after the public hearing.
Right, and I would like to hear what people have to say from the public. I am concerned that based on years of history in this town, that nobody else is going to show up except for the people who are pro,
You know,
because
I
nobody else.
don't agree.
They can
Really?
rally
Have you
people.
heard?
Really?
They will rally people for sure.
I think this is going to be a hot button
Really?
topic.
Mhm.
I do, because
Yeah.
there's going to be
Well,
people
so
who have real
Scottsville.
concerns about alcohol and what does a social club mean?
Yeah.
I think as long as people
I
hear
would
about
like
the
to
hearing.
see what their plans are for, you know, their kind of contributions to that. You know, maybe they have a plan for that kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, they're welcome to do whatever they want to, whenever they want to, but be nice to know what kind of ideas they're batting around.
Dan, you were on the ARB historically, right?
I was on the ARB.
Oh, who regulates what the storefronts look like? Does the ARB oversee that? Cause that would be a concern. It's like, what do we allow in the storefront, you know? Things are gonna be things that don't fit with the character of the town. But the ARB has oversight in the storefronts, or is it just the building? I don't
They're
remember.
in the historic district. They have, the ARB has not been brought into this conversation.
No.
But does the ARB have oversight on what storefronts look like, or is it just the
So-
structure of the building? I don't remember.
ARB is the outside,
Yeah, it's signage.
Signage,
signage and outside, so.
but they could decorate those two windows however they want.
Yeah, there used to be a Confederate flag hanging in
Yeah.
it when the old
Well,
hardware store was down there.
but correct me if I'm wrong, isn't this
I don't
the
remember.
upstairs? Isn't this like the second level?
Oh, this is downtown.
It's on the main level.
Oh, okay.
They're set up in the back. The windows are decorated now with like holiday stuff.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the
Presents
local
and
wineries.
packages.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think we would have any ability to speak to that.
Yeah.
So everything that's been brought up has been brought up before in conversations I've had. Either with a planning commissioner or with a town council member, just, talking it through.
Mhm.
Maybe this is to the point that cleaning up our zoning text as soon as we can next year after we wrap up our comprehensive plan.
yeah,
Is something well overdue.
Yes.
but there
Sounds
is,
like it.
something on the table right now,
Yes,
I think we need to err on the side of caution. I'm not saying anything about this club, I mean, it really is
No, I hear you.
separate from that. I really feel like it would be something that we would regret if we got into a situation where it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's why I was asking and bringing this up.
I
So
know.
thank you for your
Absolutely.
sharing your
I'm
thoughts.
totally with you.
I just didn't want to go into next week or in 2 weeks and
Well, it sounds like we'll have an opportunity to ask questions and bounce things off during this joint session.
yeah.
is there any other questions that maybe I could do some research in general?
The conflict of interest with the police department is one that's important to me.
Have that written down, and then I have also. Examples of a public club or a private club. Of a for-profit club with civic minded.
Yeah, I just want to know, like, and I'm not comparing any clubs to any clubs here, but like, could a motorcycle gang open a club here? And I mean, as long as they weren't doing anything illegal that the police would shut them down for, like,
So,
would they have a buy right to run a club? And
so I was going through old zoning. As you do as a town administrator. And you guys had a billiards club across the street. And it was the same conversation about what do we want in the downtown, what's.
James,
restricted.
Yeah.
the James River Grill.
They'll never ever have it again, I hear. The fights.
No, across the
Awesome.
street, right?
No, I'm talking about why we don't have a billiards club in this town anymore.
And for example, your special use permit is for billiards clubs and dance clubs, so.
right,
What I suggest also is, I'm available always to answer questions you have, so if something comes to mind. Please reach out.
I'm sorry that I don't know the answer to this, I didn't, memorize the zoning, but is the club's ordinance that we're talking about separate from that dance club's ordinance? Okay,
Yeah,
so it was separated. Because why? Like, do we know why that is a separate section? Was it because it was a not-for-profit? Or, I guess it was never explicitly said.
I think if you look at chapter 11, which might be useful before the 16th. I don't know how to answer that. Look, I don't see too much intention that would provide any other recommendation than weighing those options you
Okay.
always have with by right and SUV.
Okay,
Like exactly like you.
I mean, this.
You want me to pull up?
No, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say this clubs and lodges, you're talking about like Masonic lodges, or maybe like the 4-H club or the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or something along those lines. Is what I'm assuming this is applying to, but if you could come in, if a group could come in and make the arguments that it's not specific enough and that.
Here's A, and then if you could pass it around, you flip over.
Yeah.
We
Okay.
could even just include some verbiage that says not otherwise identified in chapter 11.
Okay, yeah,
Because I don't think that the word club means the same thing today that it meant,
right.
when the Masonic Lodge moved into that space.
Has the town attorney made any other recommendations about what could get the town in legal trouble based on this?
I think the most important thing was, I have properly read and followed our zoning in regards to inconsistencies. And then we have brought it up to council because by the letter of the law, it's an SUP with inconsistency. But also you can look at the zoning, you can realize it's a typo. It's something got duplicated over between by right and permitted use.
Okay.
So I think the most important thing was making sure that I am doing proper zoning decisions. And then also to properly public hear any kind of zoning ordinance amendment.
And so from his perspective, the other thing I would say related to town council was, again, what I said before, he was cautioning town councilors to wait until the public hearing to then formulate a
Right.
public opinion about it,
Right.
because some of the people were, me included, were talking about opinions on it, and he was saying you could run into a lot of trouble if you do that before a public hearing.
Okay,
So that's kind of what he was.
So kind of saying if they bring it up, then we can kind of act on that.
Well, basically what he's saying is you want to have the public hearing. I mean, we all have our thoughts on that. Once the public hearing, yeah, but then have it, we've heard what the public had to say, now have a robust debate and talk.
so don't air our thoughts now.
On paper, this decision would be really easy. It's just with people and
Mhm.
instances and history and all of that going on around it. And we're not really able to talk frankly about it, I don't feel. So we'll leave it for the 16th.
I have a quick question before we wrap up. Is there any way to figure out what the text was before the copying and pasting snafu?
I'm not sure where, but there's probably somewhere where you can find 96. Albemarle County
396?
codes.
But like, okay,
But also at that point, I don't think I think, well, especially with the presentation we're gonna have after this,
yeah,
I think it's very important to start working on the best conventions you have.
right. I guess maybe I misunderstood. So we didn't have any zoning that prior to 1996. So this copy and paste error was in the Albemarle County Code.
I don't know.
Okay.
That my best guess is that's how that happened.
Okay, I gotcha. I didn't know if maybe like we already had our code and then it got, documentation got messed up when there was some updating going on. Okay, that's fine. It's,
I would take it as an opportunity to modernize it.
Okay.
For example, like our setbacks sometimes in residential districts are way bigger than now is the best practice for homes.
okay,
That's just because homes are, kind of like planning neighborhoods.
okay,
People moved away from cul-de-sacs. Because it's trendy, wood panel to marble, whatever it is.
right. Okay, all right, thank you.
Right.
All right, shall we move on? All right, so the next new business item is a joint session called for the Planning Commission and Town Council on January 16th.
That, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So that's just what's gonna happen on January 16th at 6:30. Be there. And then the next item on the new business agenda is a continued discussion of our comp plan updates.
Okay. Hopefully here. I haven't opened it. You can put it over there. Yeah, you can drag over there and then I can screen share. For the YouTube. I'm gonna put Zoom and then something to that. Jim. Hey. Well, hello again. I distributed the hard copy. I was there for the off. She was also on the screen. So today, I'd like to give an update on our recent engagement activities. Then talk about the capital improvement programs that I came up recently. Then the text for the community planning area. And then talk a little about the comprehensive plan document structure. And then the schedule for remaining work. Okay, so you might have heard that I did a short recording with Nancy for the Jane Exchange about the comprehensive plan. So explain the process there. Then the Boys and Girls Club event that Dan mentioned, they came here on December 21st. There was a really lively event. I have a few photographs to show. And then coming up, Scottsville Elementary, the third graders will be coming here on January 23rd. So this morning, Javier and I had a meeting with the third grade teachers and the assistant principal. And also, Miss Wells, the principal, came here back in December to check out the space. This was the first time she'd been here. So just the first talk about the Boys and Girls Club engagement. Again, it was very exciting for the kids. We had 8 teens from the Boys and Girls Club that we walked over to the Boys and Girls Club, Dan, Javier, and myself, and we picked them up and walked them along the levee. Walked to the pump house and then circled back to town hall. So most importantly, the levee and pump house was really sharing with them about the flood mitigation strategies of the town. And I think the most important thing, Dan did an excellent job, and he built a great rapport with the students. So while we're building the rapport on the tour, we brought them in here and they were really wanting to open up and share a lot of ideas. So once they got here, the local government discussion, we introduced them to what happens in this room, what happens in this building, and how the town functions, basically, very simply. And we elected basically a mayor from the 8 students. That mayor controlled the gavel, so when they got a little bit of rowdy, the mayor banged the gavel, so they got really excited with that. In terms of voting,
She was a rather,
was a riot.
she was a rather energetic mayor. She was happy to do the vote.
She got in charge.
She was in charge.
There isn't.
I'm sorry, I
and
missed that.
what we heard throughout the discussion was they were really passionate about restaurants and fast food. So we,
And one in particular.
yes, Katie's
America.
Chicken.
Oh, man.
Bring it on.
A close but distant second was Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A, yeah.
So some young ladies especially raised some good points about, is fast food good for the community, some other considerations. So
Wow.
it wasn't just everyone,
Cute.
you know, on the bandwagon for fast food, but basically there was a deliberation, and then they basically voted, should the town have a fast food, and if the town should have fast food, what would it be? Would it be a Chick-fil-A or a Cane's? It was unanimous for Cane's.
What did they have to
Cane's
say
has
about,
major
you know,
traffic
were
jams.
there
Hitting
any
me.
cons discussed?
Well, you know, they mentioned, for instance, grocery store is really important.
Yeah.
They mentioned the price of housing. One gentleman especially mentioned that his family really faces troubles because of
housing prices.
Wow,
They were actually,
that's really great.
as they got going, they were really engaged.
What was
They
their,
didn't
what
start
was
out
the age
engaged,
range?
they didn't start out engaged, they were high school kids,
High
Okay.
schoolers.
But I love that they were,
middle
you
school,
know,
high school.
taking their situation and bringing that to light.
Yeah,
Oh,
That's
no.
cool.
Did we had anybody advising them, or we just letting them go at it?
Well, we had a few PowerPoint slides, we had a structure, but once they started to open up, it was just
Kinda
kind
went
of, you know,
Well,
kind of following their
we
lead.
kind of interacted,
Well, that's
Eileen was here also, so we kind of went back and forth, and if you see the picture of me up there, if it was kind of a low moment, I kind of wrapped them up a little bit, but it was honestly, they were really.
We weren't
really
bringing up
thoughtful.
trucks of factory farming and seeing the chickens go to the.
They were
fast food restaurants.
very thoughtful and what they did, and they were engaged, and I'll give you one example that really made me really happy was one of the students mentioned about the idea of how it would be important to make the connection off of the Route 20 bridge,
Uh-huh.
which is one of the projects, actually it's been on my list for a long time. Anyways, that was their idea. Like,
Oh,
I thought, wow, it's cool to hear a young person
Mhm.
see it also as we were
Yeah.
walking around. And I think maybe the other part of it would just be, there was a point where actually I said it to them, and then I said, because they were like, are you really gonna listen to us? And I said, we really are trying to listen to you. And I think they really were sincere. I think the sincerity of what they shared was both directions. And I think that's really the idea is we really weren't just, it wasn't just show and tell. This was, what do you really think? Like, and so they really did get fairly animated. I think you were taking a lot of notes.
Yeah, for instance, majority of the kids were from Esmont, and actually, none of the kids were from Scottsville proper. There were some suggestions on what the town needs, of course, one mentioned a Walmart, a lot of them mentioned a bigger Boys and Girls Club,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
which is an infrastructure item, yeah. Then they mentioned about the cupcake store and the words drugstore above it currently. So they.
It was inconsistent. They thought it, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a drug.
but you gave them the historical aspects.
I didn't, but they were just talking about what they saw.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of listening.
That's interesting.
They were really excited about mural painting.
Yeah.
That's kind of how we got on the topic of the drugstore sign. Then one gentleman had a really good question about if my house floods, who's responsible?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh,
great
wow, I hope
question.
you have flood insurance.
Yeah, then someone asked, where does the town's money come from?
That
What'd
tobacco's
you
back
answer?
up.
That's it, yeah.
Like, what did that mean?
So then
The tobacco
another person
shop
asked,
moved in.
oh, the pump house that we just visited, like that,
Cigarette
but
shops.
how does a person get to the pump house? And that's how the discussion about the walkway from the bridge came up.
Yeah.
Let's see, and then they talked about existing gas stations, and someone mentioned a new market coming up will be more expensive. So they have a lot of insights on these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
They want a nail salon, the ladies did, they said there's not an existing nail salon.
There is.
There is, yeah.
I do, and I go there.
Well,
Don't my nails look lovely?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Laura Mays. She's
Great
great.
color.
Just so you know,
So
for
that-
future reference.
there was a discussion whether there is a nail salon, they said, oh, it's not open very often.
Oh, yeah, well, they had
What-
closed
right.
down after somebody said.
So. Then, they don't want a skate park, you know, I asked, you know, a skate
Wow.
park, but they're like, no, people don't skate anymore.
What about hiking trails, any kind of fitness activities? We're just at Canes and Walmart
they-
and nails,
Did they think it was like a skating rink? Or did they realize like
like what Charlottesville
skateboarding,
has.
like the McIntyre
Like they
skateboarding
are
park?
pretty aware of like what happens in Charlottesville, for instance, yeah.
We walked around, they talked about trails.
Oh, that's
Like
good.
Boys and Girls Club, you talked about the Bilgo Trail.
Yeah.
As we-
Which trail?
The building?
Well, the wood trail, the
Yeah.
old name.
Really good.
Where, I'm sorry.
It's up behind these buildings.
Oh,
You gotta be a Billy Goat to go on,
Oh, that one,
but it's a lot of fun.
it's very steep.
Henry loves it.
So a question was, would it be better to build a stairway going straight up or to kind of have a more gradual trail going behind the buildings. And so then they kind of,
Yeah, I explained to them a few different phases of things we were talking about. They said, we like the stairs. And I asked them about, should we do the thing behind, and they were, so I gave them some choices, and they talked about ideas, that we was taking notes.
then in terms of more activities besides the skate park, they were wanting an arcade and go-karting. Place for dirt bikes, four-wheelers,
Thinking right down.
Trails,
Or yeah,
they
Oh.
want a beach
the
of
density
sorts, this could be like a volleyball court, we discussed that, but they want grass and sand. But no, then they were talking about no salt water is here, but yeah, river sand could be like a beach, they said.
river access is huge, yeah.
Oh, that
Then we talked a little bit about internet and they all want better internet access.
Yeah.
So that has to do with.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
yeah, I think everybody does. We should get on this.
Why does it keep going out? That's a topic for a different conversation.
Infrastructure building.
Then they had a lot of comments on the structure of the school itself, which is not really under our purview, but they say that they need a lot more resources for special needs kids with autism. That was.
Which school?
Wow.
The elementary?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Um,
I am so impressed.
Yeah.
They had a lot of good ideas, after they got engaged, they were.
Well, I think that, you know, the youth, they're gonna save us, just so you know, so it's important that they're definitely on the right track.
Yeah, sounds like it.
So they want a place to buy clothes, not have to go to Charlottesville, they want to help the homeless, they were mentioning that that's quite important.
Wow, that's really great.
Yeah. So if you can come on,
Oh, I'll be there.
23rd, is it?
Uh-huh.
Yes, at 9:45 in the morning, so it's in the middle there, we discussed a lot of different dates and times, but. Basically, they wanna bring the bus here from the school and then make it back for lunch.
Oh, well, that's really great. I'm excited.
Yeah.
But we can't all go. Who's gonna go? Who
I'd like,
wants to go?
I'd like to go. Bright's gonna be there.
I've been on vacation for 2 weeks, so we should take more time.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead, go.
So just to mention the proposed schedule or sequence and Dan and Javier chip in from your experience with the Boys and Girls Club, but basically I think starting off with a tour really worked well. And since there'll be about 35 kids, we could break it into 2 different groups. And then one could start at one end of the levee and one could start at the pump house, and then we switch. Then we
Very cool.
bring them here to have an introduction, about 30 minutes. And this is where they would elect their town councilors. From the 35, they would elect 7. And those 7 would elect the mayor, just it's like that happens here. And the teachers got really excited because the students have been learning about direct and indirect representation in 3rd grade. And they've also been learning about water catchment areas. So the levee.
What?
Yeah, really ties in well for 3rd grade.
Wow.
So then breaking up this introduction to local government, I was thinking we could do the math exercise, one group, the other group could do a short office tour. Just to kind of break it up and, you know, they can stretch their legs and then bring them back and then do another 30 minutes of deliberations. Where we actually start asking the questions. I know it might not be as straightforward, we were doing a lot of mixing, I guess we could say. As in we would say something and they bring up ideas and even more ideas on different topics, but. This is a total of almost 2 hours. That's about the maximum time we have.
And the other thing to say too is, again, going back to your audience. Dealing with a middle school and high school, I mean, I know we know this is dramatically different from the 3rd grader. The nice thing about the 3rd graders is they're gonna be with you from the first moment. They'll be ready to roll, so. You better be ready to roll, so to speak. Like, in other words, they're gonna be like, they're much more engaged quickly. And that's, so thinking about how to do that, I think, how you do that, and also just paying attention to the weather, hopefully, I mean, if the weather's great, like we had great weather. The weather stinks, then you adjust, you know, based on what you have, you don't wanna be running around and,
Gotta read the room, so.
yeah, just. But that age is like, that's a really. I mean, they're gonna start out ready to roll. You know,
Who gives the tour?
Well, Dan was our excellent tour guide for the Boys and Girls Club. I hope he can do it again if the time works out, but we'd have to have a second tour guide for the other group, yeah. But if-
Who's familiar with the, someone who's familiar with the pump house.
Get Nancy in there.
Nancy actually joined us briefly at the pump house and she was, engaging with them and they were really excited to meet a former mayor of Scottsville.
That's cool.
She's a celebrity.
So, yeah, it'd be great if we could have 2 planning commissioners and two town councils and maybe plus mayor. Then we could divide up into different groups and that would be really successful.
Well, and I would say if this is something that others, more than 2 commissioners want to do, then I say we just make a meeting of it. I mean, this is a great opportunity for us as well as the kids.
Yeah.
So it just means that we have to have an official start, which could be really cool for them to witness. And we'd have to, take notes and have a closing. So it could be cool for them and it could be good for us too. Javier, thoughts?
Grand idea.
A little bit of help from the chair to make sure we do that all properly. I would be
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I spent enough time with kids. I'm good with missing it.
That's the deal.
Let me double check all that stuff. It's not gonna be a party because
Yeah, basically, I wouldn't want anyone to not be able to participate because of that 2-person rule. So we can make it happen.
Great, okay, so we'll communicate by email. on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we may, we'll move on to capital improvement program. So as you might see, the word infrastructure has been added at the beginning. Because over the last few days since I emailed you the document, Javier and I was sitting at Panera, was it the day before New Year's? New Year's Eve at least, working on it.
Is that
Basically,
your Scottsville Panera? Is that the one you?
yeah, hopefully they're doing Scottsville Panera.
king.
Every day.
it's called retail leak. So we're trying to prevent it in the future.
Yeah.
It's a-
But the question was, what is really a capital improvement and what should go in this program? So what I learned is that Scottsville does not have a formal capital improvement program right now. It has not had one. So this is a great opportunity for the town to develop this and really have as one of our comprehensive plan potential goals is, develop this fiscal well-being. So maybe what I suggest we go through the materials and then we can have a discussion on what is the definition and what should be included in here. So basically, there's of course a part of the Code of Virginia that deals with the comprehensive plan and requires a capital improvement program. Okay, and like I said, the previous comp plan in the town has not had a CIP before. And the CIP can include expenses, but also revenue, if you have capital revenue, for instance. So here's just throwing out some potential characteristics of what could be in here. The cost has to be an essential public purpose. It has to be long-term. It can't be recurring or maintenance related. And sometimes there's a gray area on some of these items. And it has to have significant value. For instance, looking at the recent Charlottesville CIP or Fluvanna CIP that we have in our shared folder, if you want to take a look. They indicated $50,000 or more should be an expense. So $2,000 means different for Scottsville and $2,000 in Charlottesville, of course. So we could refine this and be just a guide for future decision makers. And what's the difference between a CIP and a budget? So a CIP is more long-term, the longer-term horizon. A budget is really an annual process.
Can we stop you and ask questions or?
Go ahead.
Okay, I don't know how the structure works yet. So as far as capital improvement is typically, in my knowledge, you have sort of a nonprofit that's like a Friends of Scottsville group that helps fund some of these. Is that true? Charlottesville has that, correct?
No, but we have some potential grants that might pay for some of these things.
Okay,
Another consideration is, for those that might rent out apartments or those you might hear of, capital improvements that you can right off the taxes, right?
Mhm.
So basically the town does not currently, deduct their capital improvement costs, right? So that's another consideration the town might be considering. And this could, in some ways, fall into that, but in other ways, accounting can be very complex and not match up with what this simple document might be suggesting. But I think the most important thing is to have these costs on the radar. And they're present for the annual budget making process, so maybe I can give some examples, but even through the last discussion we've had over the last few days, there have been new items that have come up, and it's just a consideration process. Even today, someone mentioned, why doesn't this building have a generator? Is that important? So on and so forth. So the generator could be a capital improvement. Okay,
Oh, sorry. So for example, when we did the community outreach, this is that nexus of the conversations we had about what we aspire in that comprehensive plan, but also grounding it with what you can do year over year, as a town. So I can't remember who brought it up, but this is exactly the kind of next you thought.
so it's both looking at the short-term annual budget, but also the long-term annual budget reviews and being more prepared. Okay, so why look at these expenditures on a long-term basis? That creates that discussion and that deliberation. It helps prioritization. And it really brings up and forecasts these long-term costs, because if the town on a really limited budget currently doesn't have enough money to pay for barely the current costs, how can it, anticipate growth? There's some of these new developments that might be coming up by right or by GP.
Lincoln, are you willing to write grants for the town?
Oh, I'm up for anything, but once we finish the comp plan.
Yeah.
Once we get this done. But basically, the grant application process can take some time. There's been 1 or 2 grants that haven't been successful recently, so on and so forth, but we can still have those on the horizon. Yeah. And then these are just some considerations at the bottom, but some things like ADA access or something is a legal mandate that really has to be factored in. So on and so forth. The
So-
bottom is maintenance. Go ahead.
What's the plan to tackle this? Because we hadn't discussed this before now, but I feel like this is more town council stuff. So is this something that they're working on?
Well, basically, the town council governance. And
So I think this is a requirement for a comprehensive plan. And the most imperative thing, same as any zoning ordinance, comprehensive plan, your planning commission should be recommending out to town council. So it is more than reasonable for you guys to have these discussions, especially if we're having conversations in the comp plan about what the future looks like, what we want to do in regards to development, what we want to do in regards to public safety. We've talked about the roads, we've talked about housing, all those different community outreach events we've had.
Sure.
So it's worth digging our teeth into as we're doing it.
Is it correct to say between the two, I'm sorry, let me interrupt you there. Is it correct to say between this next stage, the synthesis of what you're doing, you've gotten the data, we've gotten the surveys, we've had the community meetings, most of them. Now you're taking what you've seen, trying to put it all together, and then coming back and saying, okay, this is how it seems to fit as a recommendation for policy, or this is how it seems to fit for an area of adjusting. The old comp plan was this, the new comp plan is this. And so this because you're finessing it now.
we're finessing, and we're basically sifting, so we have the existing comp plan document. We're updating some portions and deleting and replacing the other portions, and then adding portions like this capital improvements plan was not in that document. And it's required, so we're adding it in. Just to explain a little more about how this process started a few days or weeks ago. Government Services Committee had an existing Excel file they've been working on the last few months.
And they've done it every year for the last 3 years in anticipation of us just doing our budget. Staff with town council.
And there were some things on there, for instance, like, the police department had their capital, items on this list. So you might not consider police, items as being part of the comprehensive plan. But there's one view could be, hey, let's put everything on one page so it's all visible. Because if you're looking at things piecemeal, if you're looking at only infrastructure costs, the town is not really looking at all the long-term costs together. So this has been a good discussion over the last few days. So basically our recommendation would be, most recently, would be to take off the police department costs, the long-term police department cost. And take off a lot of the things that are tilted more towards maintenance or replacement. And just focus on the new or betterment things that really fit that definition that I mentioned earlier. So for instance, like repainting Victory Hall might be, $10,000. That's not really replacing anything or making it better, it's just keeping it up to a certain standard.
So it doesn't necessarily specify where the money's coming from, it's just making suggestions of what is best interest of the town and the community. I
Correct.
see.
And this is not actually expending the money, because planning commission is recommending to town council, it's just a forecast.
Yeah.
Because forecasting, town council, in a few months when they make the budget for the next fiscal year, they can say, hey, this is a great plan, we just don't have any money. We can't fund what you would have indicated in year one. Yeah. So also to highlight on this structure here, vertically, it's organized by the intended goals of our new comp plan. Goal 1, build out infrastructure, so we have all the roads and public safety items. Then we have enable housing choices with goal 2. Goal 3, create community connections, that's really walkability in public space. And then 4, demonstrate that value in physical well-being. So we want to follow that same structure and make sure that we're spending money on each area. So even though demonstrate value and have physical well-being, it seems like more of a paper exercise. This whole CIP funnels into that. And then, like I had a discussion with the director of the Weldon Cooper Center, they're willing to discuss with the town, how can we do that economic study of the region, and how can how can Scottsville demonstrate its value throughout the 3 counties, and not just a piecemeal approach. So that regional study would be under this goal 4.
And again, just Lincoln, just so I'm saying this partly for my purpose, if I'm correct, for everybody. This overall list is taking everything you've learned and putting numbers in for that. It's actually taking, when somebody said, I want to improve a trail, or I want to have better safety on a road, this is how you're trying to quantify that in here.
Yes, and I think this would be kind of a middle of the road reasonable approach, because for instance, the previous sidewalk study, connecting Dollar General, northward and so on and so forth, that was like $1 million sidewalk budget. So we don't have $1 million in here for that new sidewalk project, because that seems like a lot of money. But maybe the town could take a more piecemeal approach and have this planning study and focus on more targeted areas, and then really focus on those trails, stream bridges, and levee bridge access. Smaller projects, maybe rather than $1 million here, you're $3 million, so it's just not feasible, potentially.
And again, these are your recommendations, which we will discuss as a planning commission to see, should it be 8,000 or 3,000 or whatever.
Yeah, none of these are really based on firm quotes or estimates. These are, rough numbers. For instance, we had a call with Councilor Morse this afternoon, and she really brought up the consideration of a generator for Victory Hall. So we did a quick internet search, and it said $20,000 down on year 2, for instance. She also raised a very good consideration, Victory Hall electrical wiring. So that's something that needs to be confirmed or studied. Yeah, so I, based on my knowledge, just put down $200,000 to make the whole building here would need to be rewired.
Lincoln, let me say this too, maybe for the purpose of the planning commission and Liz, that I can't remember where you were. When did you step down?
2018.
Okay, so this, I think you were there. So when Matt came in as a town administrator. And we, as a town council at the time. Met with a mentor of his, and then we strategized. In reality, everything that happened until the end of Matt being here was simply implementing what we did at that time. That's all it really was. And at the time, at the last couple of years, the council was very different than when the council implemented all those things. The reason I mention it is, right now, the council is different. And the planning commission, we're kind of up at bat again at the moment. So what I mean is, both as a town council and as a planning commission. We've gotten this data, we've gotten this information. We actually have an opportunity to talk through and say, what do we really want to do? In other words, this is what we did 5 or 6 years ago. We did it differently. The planning commission wasn't in that process. This time we have a chance to be in that process, and that's what this is. So this is, I'm saying to each of you all, this is actually a fairly serious or significant thing, or it could be meaningless almost. So in other words, we have a chance right here to put some more effort into this and to say, town council, we really think all this data, all this information, all these surveys and things, what we've heard, this is taking all that and quantifying, use this now to implement it, which is what we did 5 or 6 years ago, a different way. But, and I'm actually saying to y'all as a planning commission, some of the conversations going on in the town council itself, we don't have that vision at the moment, and this can help us have that. So this one may be different than many other, a lot of times a comp plan comes in, it's great, there it is. This actually is coming in at a time where the council actually in the town needs direction. And it's, so in other words, it's coming at a time where the effort that comes together. So Lincoln, first of all, I appreciate this, but also I'm kind of saying to each of us as a town council, I mean, as a planning commission, these next few weeks or month or two, when we now take all this data, will be important to take what he says. We may agree or disagree with what he says. We finesse it through our process, and then we take it to the town council. But it's actually really powerful if we come this way, because it's kind of saying, here's what we really think you should do. And Molly, you talk about that a lot. You say a lot of times we talk about stuff and we don't do it. This is actually an interesting opportunity for us to kind of say, guys, here's the cookie recipe, make the stinking cookies, you know?
Well, and it can be, you know, an exercise in frustration too. I mean, you're always
Sure.
very, very positive.
Sure.
But what we're talking about is a whole bunch of things that we'd like to see in the town. I'm just not exactly sure where any additional money is gonna come from.
It's gonna come from grants,
Well, yeah, absolutely.
and you're gonna write that.
Okay, but you know, talking about the sidewalk
Yeah.
program, I really agree with you. If we piecemeal it, then it's more attainable. We might be able to, you know, get the momentum going on that, but, yeah.
So I think, I totally, second, Dan's observation that this creates a vision. And it also creates realization. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, if you want to pay for all these things, that just what's on this page is $1.7 million.
Yeah,
And this current fiscal year, the town is only spending about $16,000.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's very good.
so there's a big gap.
yeah.
So how did you come up with the, just based on all of the research that you have been doing for the comp plan? And that's, I mean, that's what these big headers are, but like
Yes, so for instance, it also depends on where you see this CIP being most useful.
Yeah.
You know, the planning commission just say, oh, let's only focus on the roads and the sidewalks and trails, and that can be it. Or do you consider the buildings as town assets also as part of the comp
Right.
plan?
okay.
Isn't it easy to find Charlottesville and Fluvanna online if we just Google it?
I can send you, we already have a shared folder, I actually
Oh, okay,
add you to the shared folder, so.
Thank
I have
you.
it saved here along with.
that would be great to be able to look at what good examples are.
Well,
then
thanks for
of
doing
course,
this.
for
Yes, that's
bigger
great.
ticket items there, they have 4 housing projects on their CIP.
Yeah.
You know,
Sure.
so on and so forth. But basically, I'll just go down the items and I'll explain a little bit, why they're here and why they're that amount. 81, for instance, is walking corridor signs and wayfinding signage. So for instance, Eileen was writing a grant, I think it was T-Mobile Downtown Communities Grant, $50,000 or something. She was looking for new signs, and from what we gathered, this was positive. And we also heard other people, especially the local businesses, when we had the business roundtable, they said, you know, parking is not really a problem, it's more people finding the parking. So it's more about signage directing people where additional parking is in this parking lot, so on and so forth. So we heard that from the Baines owner, for instance, that she directs a lot of people to where additional parking is. So a simple thing like $5,000 in additional parking here signs could really help the issue.
I wanted to just quickly mention that, you know, the other day there was a funeral at the funeral home, it was right around rush hour. And I came into town and I couldn't find a parking space. I couldn't find one back here, you know, none of that. And it was the first time I had ever experienced that. But I also know that one extra event or whatever can kind of really tax that.
Yeah, so Javier and I were emailing this afternoon, that's 4th of July and funerals, it seems,
Yeah,
on those events.
Yeah.
The comp plan has an existing parking plan. It's a little bit difficult to read, but we might just categorize, having how many parking spots there are.
yeah. I don't know, I just wanted to mention that.
What I suggested is an iterative device. I find for conversation, the most useful thing sometimes is something like this, where you're starting to put numbers to the statements and the principles or the values you have in the town. That's really a very important exercise, not only for you, either as appointees or council members, but also for your staff to be able to implement what you have recommended to town
Right.
council or town council has expressed to me. So
It's,
it's a great exercise. It's
You know, something that's gonna sound totally, I'm sorry, you're gonna say something, Doug, but just a quick thought. Are there other places where, let's just say Scottsville has a parking app? So it's a parking app, you just boom, you pull in the Scottsville parking app and it shows you maps and all kind of different things. Like, do other places do that? Does Harrisonburg or Charlotte, does any place have their own city
Waze
app
does
or
that.
something?
It doesn't Waze do, like the big app?
I don't know, I'm just wondering if like something in the future, instead of having a sign out there, everybody just, your technology, you're like, yeah, here's the map, you can find. Whatever, maybe there are, or I wonder if there's existing technology already.
or like
that
a
could-
QR code that you could scan from the website.
Yeah, something really simple that,
Well, it tells me all the public parking in Charlottesville, and punching it, but not Scottsville.
so maybe there's a way that we can, using future technology to also address the same question.
Or we just update ways. If that's possible.
I
Oh,
wonder
yeah,
if
it's
this
only
is
given
something
Charlotte.
that,
Option.
Who cares about us?
Yeah.
the gentleman that does the emergency and the weather, what's his
Jack.
name? Jack. I wonder if he would know. He's pretty tech savvy and knowledgeable. I wonder if he would know if there is such technology available to us.
So I'll ask him, he's already drafted the map, so I have a public one that I'm gonna try to fold in to update the map we have in our 2018 plan for our this year.
He was tough, yeah. Google.
Awesome, good.
Is this something that is going into the comp plan?
Yes.
Required.
By requirement.
Okay, but like at this level of specificity? What?
Ideally, we have a,
Right.
you know,
Oh,
one
right.
pager explanation of, you know, text that goes along with this, and I emailed you a proposed one and a half pager.
Mhm.
And then we have some sort of table like this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
as you can see from Fluvanna and Charlottesville, they really have a, you know, 30-page document, yeah. But again, it's what's suitable for our needs. Just having a CIP is the first step. So we're breaking ground here.
I think it's the right scope for.
It does
Yeah.
feel a little more doable
Yeah,
in this page.
format.
So moving on. A 2 and 3, what we learned from the VDOT discussion and other discussions regarding transport grants is. First step is to do the study, and then the second step is to actually implement and get more money for the actual infrastructure. Yeah. So, for instance, we are talking to VDOT and others about these two intersections, Route 20 and Ginger Road, Route 20 and Hardwood Street. These are two areas that are really going to be impacted by the East Village development and also the new gas station. There's going to be a lot of traffic coming off 20, turning into the gas station. You know how the road kind of rises there. So, you know, we are talking to VDOT about this, for instance. We've heard that from a lot of people. So these two intersections might be the most challenging. There's also, you know, where Route 20 really intersects with basically the Route 6 is it? At Dollar General, that's another place. And just to fill you in, Ms. Knotts, we've been looking at the ranking of the county, how they rank intersections.
Yeah,
And the Scottsville intersection, I think the highest ranking was number 89 out of the whole county.
compared to, yeah,
It's,
North.
so it's never gonna really get upgraded unless it bumps up to the top 20 intersections in the county, right?
yeah.
So that's the challenge. So, and we're having trouble justifying upgrading our ranking without a study, for instance, right? And there've been previous studies about the safety, accidents, so on and so forth, and it's just really challenging. We can advocacy to bump up that list.
Yeah.
So this is putting something on the paper.
Do they need more accidents?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can be in charge of that.
basically.
I
Just
gotcha.
run out in the middle of the road, just do it quickly.
Do we advise our police department still on where we'd like them to sit? Historically, we did that a lot.
Really?
Yeah, we would tell them like where to park the car.
Well,
It
what,
slowed down the traffic.
what's causing angst this week? Which,
Well, I'm saying, once the gas station opens, are we gonna require our police department to park up there for the first few weeks? Cause we're never gonna get a traffic light until we bump up the list.
I'm going with the accidents.
When I see a cop, I slow down, don't you?
One of the things I will say. The police efforts in Scottsville right now are. At a very high level, so I think they would be very receptive to
Just saying, like the ones that open.
any input we have for them.
Yeah. Well, even if they would park cars around town, like on East Market, when there was someone speeding. And just having the empty car there would slow down the traffic.
All right, can we,
Yeah,
sorry,
Just
it's
to mention more.
almost
Briefly
9
on the
o'clock.
intersections, there were previous roundabouts designs that
Uh-huh.
were $1 million roundabouts. Is that gonna happen also?
Yeah.
No, but this is maybe more middle ground, $500,000 in improvements to the existing intersection. A6 is electric vehicle charging, so this is already in the works, it's a public-private partnership. No real cost to the town. The private company is paying for the charging and will charge the consumer. So that's one highlight that's already happening.
Is that gonna be part of the market thing or?
So about a year ago, we had an approval for 2 charging stations in the parking lot here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we included it because it's an example of actually the capital starting to provide new revenue. Scottsville doesn't have the same examples as other municipalities. But, you know, for example, you run a swimming facility in the city and then you get revenue off of a membership, but charging stations are a little example of that, I'll put it that way.
So these infrastructure improvements, the town might not be paying $100,000 or $500,000. This is just an indicator for maybe what the full cost would be. And then the rest would be filled in by grants. Moving on. Area B would be public safety. So we used to have police department and so on and so forth. But some new insights were regarding the video cameras to public areas, addition to those. AEDs in the building, if you consider AED important for infrastructure here. And then vehicular security boards, this has been a really concern at the farmer's market, evidently. And also the potential for the pump house and other places around town. So it's a security item.
What are they?
It's basically metal posts that are filled with concrete that prevent cars from driving into critical infrastructure.
Yeah,
We changed parking spots and it wasn't built to spec exactly, so it's us coming back and trying to fix something we found. Kind of like zoning.
So this is a great example of discussions, you know, people might not think about AEDs until they have a heart attack.
right.
That's why we have it on the list, and it's easier to remove or not consider than just forget about it. Moving on, electrical, this was also brought up about the generator and then the wiring. You could also add other major items to buildings here, other buildings. Moving on to goal 2, enabling housing choices. We've heard that housing is very important to the community. But of course, just like Charlottesville is spending $30 million, for instance, on a housing complex in their CIP. Scottsville doesn't have that money, but what can we do? We could potentially get that grant from Virginia Housing to update our zoning ordinance. So that when the Virginia Housing folks came here, they said no one in the state of Virginia has ever used that grant that they've had.
Wow.
Yeah,
Why?
they just mentioned it's a few years old, right? And, you know, I think a lot of municipalities are like Scottsville, they copy and paste their materials from the 90s, for instance, and just never take a wholesale approach on a specific item. So if we write a small grant and we can get, I think the maximum is $25,000. That could rewrite a lot of zoning code.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a little bit of money that can go towards our housing goal. Creating community connections, this is really about that walkability, sidewalks and trails. So as we discussed, you know, sidewalks are expensive if you do a whole couple blocks, but if you do a piecemeal approach or just filling gaps in strategic places, that needs to start. We need to have an investment every year. We've heard a lot of community engagement feedback about the benefits of the trails in town. How can we potentially connect the trails of Van Cleve to the East Village development that might be coming up, for instance? So there's recommended here a study to kind of guide these connections and then implement based on that study. And again, other grants from you know, different state agencies could pay for more trail improvements from either before streets or before. The last goal forward here is that regional economic study to really justify Scottsville in the middle of 3 counties. And that's $15,000. What the director mentioned to me, they can do some work for Scottsville on just a voluntary basis, but if, depending on what the town really needs in this economic study, then the wealthy people would apply for grants for it. So that would be, you know, further down the road, but there's some potential there. But what we kind of learned through the comp plan process is, if we go to talk to one county like Albemarle, they have their own agenda. If we go to Urbana, they have their own agenda. And Buckingham is very different, and it's a piecemeal approach of sorts. So Scottsville needs to really show its value to the wider region of how many people it serves. So at the bottom here, you have the potential costs that could be invested every year, and I've also indicated a 2.5% annual inflation number. So you don't just look at year 5 and think, oh, that's $735,000. That's actually $838,000. And right now, 2.5% inflation would be, you know, a best case scenario.
Yeah.
But inflation, as we know, is trending downwards. And again, this is just putting some numbers on the paper based on the information we have or gathered from different parts of the town or people. If you want to take things off or add more things, we'd be glad to make, of course, next revisions. What Javier has mentioned is he's going to capture those maintenance related items that we've deleted recently, and that's still going to funnel into the town's processes. and the budget for the police infrastructure.
I keep a bit of this that helps me out with budget, but this is tailored to what we need for a comp plan. Or what we're required, something like that. They're in heartburn, as Becky used to say.
One of the things, Lincoln, I'm just gonna say that. I think it's maybe helpful for the planning commissioners also to hear is that. Having been through this process a few times before, one of the reasons a lot of small towns boilerplate. What an old comp plan had is because they don't have you. And what I mean by you is you've been able to champion this cause in a way that we haven't had before. You've really given us an opportunity to do a lot deeper approach, and normally we'd be probably paying 5 or 10 times the amount of money we are paying you. We'd be paying some other outside source to do this, so you're giving us a much more comprehensive plan, so thank you. And I think the point you just made is a really good one, because you're also, besides having that skill set, you have eyes to see. Liz just asked a question before, you know, who writes grants, so to speak, and you said, I do, when I do other things. But I think she'll keep that in mind. But coming back to what I'm trying to say is, you're giving a valuable gift to the town, because you're bringing not only a much more thorough approach to this process, but you're also taking this information and thinking, oh, I know this connection over here that can help Scottsville. So thank you for that. And so as you see those ideas, feel free to incorporate them both from a planning commission perspective. I mean, you may think of other things in the future, or advisements that suit either what somebody has already said, or maybe it's some other Lincoln idea that you have that maybe isn't from the data, but you see it because you're able to see where we're going, if that makes sense. So feel free to do that, and thank you for what you brought to the process.
How quickly do you want feedback on any of these items?
Today
or like next meeting?
I think, basically, we're going to be synthesizing things very quickly, what happened. Everything's gonna solidify very quickly, so perhaps, feedback in 1 week, you can just email. Just your thoughts, also have the opportunity, we could have a one-on-one or, you know, a small group discussion that doesn't require quorum. We're glad
Absolutely,
to talk
yeah.
more, we've been doing that throughout the process.
Sounds good.
We have a wealth of knowledge from their 6 years.
I'm not gonna keep Shannon past 9 o'clock.
Okay, so, I'll just keep going through this slide deck. So basically, the CIP is required to be updated every time the comp plan is updated, so I did 5 years. But basically, the Code of Virginia says that if the town council requires it, the planning commission has to update it yearly. So I think that's a healthy requirement, actually. So we could write that into the comp plan as a future requirement. Once the comp plan is approved, then the planning commissioners, whoever is sitting up in the future, would have to update it yearly. And again, it's a great exercise on my opinion, because you start thinking about AEDs and other things, and maybe an AED is not specifically infrastructure, so it's town planning. But it's healthy for the town to discuss these things.
Yeah.
And if the planning commission isn't gonna, you know, buy AEDs, maybe another part of the government will, the town council will. Okay, so just to kind of recap some feedback we received over the last 2 days. We have to have a clear definition of what's included, so today I wrote a very brief clear definition in the upper right hand corner. An essential cost of town's public purposes, a long-term useful life of 5 years or greater, is not recurrent or maintenance related, and has significant value of $2,000 or more. And of course, we can adjust the minimum amount to be 5,000, so on and so forth. So this is just putting text on paper, and I think this would be helpful for other people in the government, for instance, government services committee, to kind of take a look at this and say, oh, okay, this is why they didn't put something on this list, let's put it on our own list, for instance. So the town should begin to capitalize its assets is another potential recommendation that the comp plan could make where suitable for tax purposes. So if you have any other feedback, please say now or, email it in the next week, that'd be great, we can have a separate discussion if you like. And then, we can definitely circulate a revised document. And I also would like to give Dan's guidance throughout this process, when is it the best to start discussing these things with the town council, because we wouldn't want to get all the way. And the town planning commission recommends the comp plan, but then some of the nitty-gritty things here hold up the process. Do you know what I mean?
I think, in fact, just to respond to you on one thing, I do think introducing that. Almost maybe this week, that part of it, because that would be a little bit of a shocker to, I think, a few town councilors, but I think a shocker in a good way. I mean, sometimes when you're, because that's not how we've seen it before, and it's gonna seem like. Maybe unwelcome news a little bit, I think, to a few people.
Sorry.
Just the numbers, because these are,
Oh,
this
gotcha.
part of it, this is actually fair, this is instructive, so to speak, this kind of says.
Yeah.
This is what we think it says, so I think when you. Present it, I think it's helpful, because you can back this up, that's the point of this is that. You've taken what you've seen by all the entire process, and now you're trying to quantify it, so. This is actually, I think, good, if you at least say, this is my first look at what I'm doing with this. I think you'll meet a little resistance, but I think it'd be good to have that resistance now, so that once it's baked in, it'll make more sense. Because I think if you leave this till the end product, I think that might spoil the design, so to speak. So I let it be talked about a little bit. But I think it's great. I think this is, again, what we can all agree or disagree or amount or this or that or the other thing, but the concept of quantifying it in very specific ideas, I think is really helpful.
Well, I mean, I totally agree with that. And also, I mean, not much of this came up during our engagements. Like, I'm sorry, I must, I'm really not fully with you guys today, but I must have missed the roads and where those intersections were discussed and what improvements were discussed to them to come up with those numbers. But so much of this is stuff that must have come from government services, because we didn't talk about a lot of this. But so yeah, we need to include them right away. Am I wrong?
So for example, that road is a little bit based off of that study that I shared from about, 10, 15 years ago. That TJ did, and that was during a session where we were talking with some people who had some historical knowledge here.
Yeah, so is that the walkability study?
It's kind of the synthesis of that, so it's like, to the point, it's like us starting to put numbers towards things that we have started to collect either through like engagement events or conversations with appointees or council members, or conversations between us and like other partner agencies.
Okay, all right, so just conversations about these intersections need work, so what can we estimate that it'll cost us to do it?
Yeah, you could use the term estimate, you could also use the term indicate. For instance, we'll never know how much intersection study improvement's gonna be until the engineering study is done. So this is just putting some numbers on paper. What the government services committee is doing for their CIP working document is they're only having the items and then the annual total at the bottom. But you don't really understand how these things can be sequenced until you start parceling them out by fiscal year. Because you're just looking at the bottom line, you're like, oh, $77,000 for first year, that's achievable. But once you hit an intersection improvement, oh, that's $500,000. So it starts to jump, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's beautiful how it's laid out, and I love the detail, and I absolutely see the value in doing this. Aside from the fact that it's legally required, I could see the value in doing this. So, I mean, I know a lot of work went into this, so thanks for putting this all together. Looks really good.
I was just gonna ask if, how much grant money did we have last fiscal year? How much were we awarded?
So. It's not a great indication, because. It ended up being about 100, but it's because it was very narrowly and specifically focused on the factory. So,
The grant money
so-
that we were awarded
Yeah.
had to do with the factory?
Like research on.
so what I really want to stress, and this is what I learned in nonprofits, is that you don't look first at the grant. You look at what are your priorities, and then try to find a grant for that. Part of that is.
No, I'm just wondering if we,
Yeah.
it sounds like we're operating on those levels that are kind of being put forth here.
I mean, this year, we aren't working with grants other than the USDA grants.
Mhm.
And our capital, 16 here, and then our capital, which includes stuff that wouldn't be necessarily considered as restrictive as the definition we have here, is 50,000.
Okay,
But part of this exercise is like, we have to start having these conversations, because there's various ways you can move forward, so.
well, Liz said to me tonight,
Mhm.
and you're gonna be writing all those grants, and I'm going.
Someone's gonna throw
Say
something at me.
What happened? So I'm kind of, that led me to think about, are you writing grants? Is there someone who is earmarked to write some grants? Where are we in that process? Because this seems, I know this is maybe off the point a little bit, but I wanted to be able to understand. Yes, this is looking a lot better laid out and really inspiring in that maybe it is doable with grants, but if we're not asking for them,
So I'll give one example. Next item on our agenda is urban development area, or also known as community planning area. So there are some transfer related grants from VDOT or V-Trans that are relatively easy to apply for.
yeah.
And for instance, it's called the GAP grant. We
Yeah.
almost got it last year, but we didn't have a letter from Albemarle County.
Yeah,
So the application was really like a 2 or 3 pager, fill in the blank.
it was an exercise.
Yeah, it was a very straightforward exercise, but we're missing one letter.
Yeah,
So a grant, for instance, to study an intersection through the GAP grant is really achievable, and Matt wrote it last time.
yeah,
So some grants are lower hanging fruit than others, I guess, from what I understand.
okay, but we don't have anybody who's kind of earmarked to go after some of these grants that can help with these.
I think council needs to recommend that Javier takes a class.
Well, and we could build in a line item for a grant writer.
Yeah,
That might be worth putting in.
yeah, I
Like,
think
this
that's,
is, this is the period to think strategically
yeah,
and with vision. And this is that first step
Yeah.
to start answering those questions.
And-
Because it really does sound like there is money out there that we could apply for that could
Absolutely.
really push some of these initiatives forward, and I think we need that, we need to move. I'm always wanting things to get done. I don't guess I'm doing anything.
Javier, is there a training budget for you?
There's a small training budget, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Just.
Well, anyway,
Well,
I just wanted to say, we can't get the money we don't ask for.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. So under goal 4, I would recommend that we add a second item about having a lab for grant writer.
Yeah,
So this would have to do with physical well-being and demonstrating value.
And it could be a freelance type situation,
So you spend $10,000 for grant writer, but you get $100,000 in grant money.
Yeah.
So it's an investment.
yeah,
Okay,
okay.
I sense that we need to continue on really quickly. So community planning area. So we've been discussing this a lot throughout the last few months. So basically I sat down over the last few days and I actually wrote up one pager on this. So as we've heard from various organizations or institutions we've consulted, for instance, like VDOT, we asked them, this urban development area designation, is there any, negative aspects for the town? And said, no, UDAs are basically a great way for towns to get grant money. Because you can justify that this is an area we're focusing on growth. So, also within the Code of Virginia, under comp plans, this is an opportunity, it's not a requirement. Basically the section I wrote, it talks a lot about the history of the town and development areas. For instance, for 4 comp plans in the county, the town of Scottsville was a development area. And also Fluvanna, it appears that Fluvanna has designated the Fluvanna portion of Scottsville as a development area currently. But that's not really having an effect because the town council did not approve that. But, anyway, there are a lot of potential benefits of this designation. And what we've gathered from this, the different discussions we've had is urban development area has a certain connotation that people might grasp. But the great thing about the Code of Virginia, it allows communities to call the urban development area something else. So Fluvanna calls theirs a community planning area. So that, from what we've gathered through our discussion, is a little bit more palatable for people.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm proposing in this draft text that I emailed around.
Yeah.
Then, in terms of requirements, in terms of the boundary area, this is written into this draft document that every 5 years, the town needs to review whether the boundary of this community planning area should stay the same or change. So my recommendation and how I spent a lot of time justifying this in the text is, the infrastructure here in Scottsville is so integrated. For instance, Route 20 is really the backbone, and because of the topography and the Route 20 intersection that we've been talking about the last few minutes. One change in one intersection and at East Village, a lot of traffic from East Village might affect not only the closest intersection, but another one further down. So that's why we can't just think about a traffic study for one intersection. We have to look at the larger system. And since the town is so relatively small and integrated, that's why we should, I think, designate the whole town as an urban development area. And again, this is just a tool.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, oh, we want to forget about the one portion of the town, but then later on we discover, hey, the VDOT wants a traffic study including that part of the town, we were caught, what I mean? So that's just my recommendation, to have a wider view of what this urban development area or CPA could be. Then the last item is really writing down a potential grant. So this text I basically took directly from the OP website. That's the basically the Virginia Department of Transportation Planning, their growth and accessibility planning department. They recommend, once you indicate a UDA or a CPA, then you can apply for these grants. So that's a direct instruction or recommendation within the comp plan. So it can't be lost or forgotten. It'll be there. If that's how you guys want it to be. Okay, so I'll continue on. This is the structure of the document. It's in the Word document in our shared folders. So I will email the link again so that Ms. Knott has it and all of us have it again. So you can go in and look at the current status. So basically, the community planning area is going under the principle of enable growth, for instance. And then for instance, transportation plan will go under build out infrastructure, so on and so forth. So previous feedback on the structure of the document was basically that there's a lot of separate portions of the document which are integrated more. So for instance, the discussion on comp plan goals and principles was separate from implementation. So feedback was, why not have the goal of transport infrastructure together with the implementation ideas that we have. So we put it all together so it's not like piecemeal in different parts of the document.
Yeah, that was something that was disjointed.
And then another thing I've realized at the very end of the existing document, there's an appendix. It's on zoning code updates. So for instance, one recommendation was to take light industrial and heavy industrial and just combine it into industrial for clarity's sake. So this was already thought about 5 years ago or so, and the text has already been drafted. if you look at the existing comp plan, there's red text and bold text. So the problem was that the comp plan didn't explain what is red text and what is bold text. So I looked at it a lot and I realized, oh, red text is delete and then bold text is add, so just clarifying things like that. And a lot of this text is ready to go for the next step of updating the zoning code ordinances. Okay, schedule for remaining work. I know, the chair has been working on collecting some of this data from various different people, in terms of, lots from both Albemarle, Fluvanna, so on. So forth. I know it's a challenging process to kind of get a grasp on the number of households. And, the chair, Lisa, you're still working on this?
Yes, so I was communicating with Nancy, and I think what I have that I got from Eileen Morse is what Nancy has, but it is really convoluted the way Albemarle County and Fluvanna do their data. It's really crazy to have to pull it together, and that's even just getting a census of the homes that are in the area, let alone the businesses. So yeah, we're still a little ways off on it, but we're working on it.
Great, I think that would be a tremendous asset, because as we discussed last meeting, having a projection of a certain number of people population is not really relatable. It should be more regarding number of households, so on and so forth. So this will be really helpful in my mind.
Yeah.
The next item there on the page is I received a question or recommendation to consider updating a Van Cleef Nature Preserve master plan. So Javier and I were sitting at Panera, a couple days ago, and we were looking at the document, and it was created, I think, 2015, and then updated in 2019. And yes, the Van Cleef area will be very strategic in how it links to East Village, in my opinion.
Yeah.
With the trails and so on and so forth. So if the town was really targeting applying for grants and things to pay for these trails or easements, advocating for that, or discussing with certain landowners, an updated Van Cleef Nature Preserve master plan could be really useful. It wouldn't have to be a total recreation of the document. I think, in my opinion, the document is already very strong. We just need surgical updates to really link in East Village, the latest ideas on that.
And then one of the things I will say, Lincoln, too, because I was a part of both of those. The 19, mostly all the 19 did was correct an error from the 16. That's all it was doing, was correcting some mistakes from the 16. But your point is a good one. And the question is when, like, how to update it or when to update it.
So I think first step would be just making a recommendation in the comp plan under creating community connections, perhaps. And just say, focus on general update of the document where needed, but really focus on that connections to the East Village potential development. And that could be a future step. That could be in coordination with this study for walkability connections, for instance.
I recommend looking into AmeriCorps, because they do provide people to come out and do that kind of work, volunteer work for free. And AmeriCorps will consult for you regionally. AmeriCorps is a great program, it's free, mostly free.
Say why we need a chair.
I'm the one that AmeriCorps.
Just in time. Awesome.
So that seems like a reasonable recommendation for the comp plan. I can write that in
Yeah.
to consider the Van Cleef Nature Preserve master plan.
Yeah. We didn't have anything else to do.
Okay. So just thinking a little bit more about the process while we're kind of in the the last stretch, you could say, this solidification of ideas, crystallizing the ideas and writing it. I just pulled up the notice text for the comp plan. Basically, the planning commission has to make a recommendation and have a public meeting to support that recommendation. And then Javier is going to check with the town attorney regarding whether this can be a joint public hearing or it needs to be separate.
I'm gonna double check, but it's essentially the same process. So that zoning code that's shared up on that screen is the same one. that we discussed previously. You guys sit in a really important role where you're often required to give recommendations to town council about zoning ordinances. So I guess we'll just jump into timing of it tentatively, but.
Okay, and then there's text also on the publishing of the comp plan. So basically, the comp plan has to be available for the public to read through in preparation for the public hearing. So the comp plan needs to be, basically printed off or posted on the website. There can be positive, negative aspects of both. I was thinking about this today. Maybe I would recommend, if you're concerned about different versions of the comp plan floating around the internet, you can have a paper version here. Or if you're concerned about accessibility, like people just reading from home, you can put it on the internet. Of course, we would clearly mark this document as draft across it. So that's just something to think about. I think next meeting, we will be very close to making that decision. So I just have the calendar here. So today, of course, is the 3rd of January. So the Scottsville Elementary School visit is on the 23rd. And we are previously discussing the potential of trying to have the public hearing in the middle of the month, so on and so forth. But we wouldn't be able to have that Scottsville Elementary stuff in the document, and I think we still have a little more refinement to do. So I would suggest we take stock at the February meeting, February 5th.
So you're hoping to vote on it by then?
I think we will be close, yeah.
What I suggest is we can present a draft. And we need to get into a position where we start having conversations about when you guys feel ready with that draft and to have a public hearing on it, because I need to, same as, well, both of you, former and current, same as budget. I need to have something out for the public so they can look over it. With our 2018 update, you guys did a joint session. I look back through the records. You did similar to what the 16th planning commission went into session, provided had a public hearing, provided a recommendation, went out of session, and then town council received the same over. So I guess what we're trying to say is we're trying to get all our ducks in a row. So you guys have that option and the opportunity to make a decision on your side.
Yep. So that's the end of the slideshow. So any other feedback or comments, questions? The devil will be in the details now as we realize when this. So already when Javier and I were sitting at the mayor the last few days, we've already updated several sections. There's been some questions, for instance, on the certain historic items in the comp plan regarding historic district. We're just double checking some things, updating some stale text, so on and so forth. For instance, there's several pages in the comp plan that talk about the requirements of Virginia and the comp plan process. So I went through the code of Virginia side by side with the text, and I found that the text in our comp plan is very old regarding the process. There have been some natural updates to the House of Delegates, so on and so forth. So I've already updated that to coincide with the latest requirements. So we're just chugging away at these small but important things.
Javier or Melody, could you close that pop-up window, please?
Is that better, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation and your work.
You're an asset to the town, clearly.
Indeed.
Melody, you write grants?
Nothing I can't learn.
Yeah, that's the spirit. I like.
That's right.
It's very-
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
Right.
Good evening, everybody.
You did?
Stop sharing.
I've done that to Dan in the past, and Shannon's like a mom.